Details tonight on a twist in the search for a couple missing in the outback.
Jennie Kehlet went missing in the Goldfields near Sandstone. Her husband Raymond was found at the bottom of a 12-metre abandoned mine shaft, but Jennie had disappeared.
Any progress is good progress, and obviously the police have been busy with this in the background. Hopefully something comes of it.
At this point in time, we're not seeing anything that suggests criminality.
Are you serious?
Yes.
We've only got one side of the story.
We find Jennie, we will find out what happened.
It just doesn't happen, Andy. It's not normal behaviour.
Did you deliberately mislead the police about where you went with Ray and Jennie in Sandstone in March 2015?
No. It's not like them. They're experienced. They are not lost. Something terrible has happened.
Welcome to Some Kind of Closure, a podcast series focused on unsolved missing persons cases. Around 38,000 people are reported missing each year in Australia. Thankfully, most of these cases are resolved. In this series, however, we'll be focusing on the small percentage of cases that remain unsolved over several years. We'll explore the complexities and impact on the families involved, who at the end of the day are desperate for some answers and ultimately some kind of closure. Please be aware that this show deals with some distressing themes and may include content and language that some listeners will find distressing. In Season 1 of Some Kind of Closure, we'll be focusing on the perplexing case of missing campers Ray and Jennie Kehlet, who never returned from a prospecting trip they took to a remote region of Western Australia in March of 2015. A decade is a painfully long time to be living with the unknown, and it's my hope that this series will help shine a light on this case and open up conversations that will ultimately lead to some clarity and justice for Ray and Jennie's family.
At this point, it's not even about putting someone behind bars, getting a conviction. It's just about getting Mum. We just want to bring her home.
But before we get into the details of Ray and Jennie's story, I think it's necessary to share a bit about mine and why I'm choosing to remain anonymous for this podcast series. In 2017, while I was overseas, I got word that a family member of mine had gone missing. Weeks turned into months and months into years. It's impossible to explain the complex emotions, unending questions, confusion and sleepless nights that families of missing persons experience. Ambiguous loss is the term used to describe the gut-wrenching experience of not having a loved one in your life anymore, yet not being able to fully mourn them due to the unknown nature of the endless whats, wheres, whys and hows, and ultimately not knowing for sure if they're still alive. We all seek answers to the unknowns in life, but families of missing persons have an impossible situation to face, and at some point you have to get used to the fact you may never get answers. As a family, we lived with 7 years of zero contact and zero answers, and it was devastating in different ways for so many people. But our family was one of the lucky few. After 7 years of silence, contact was made, and for the first time we had proof of life and some hope. This process has been a long journey and is still ongoing, but we finally have some answers, and the ambiguity that we all lived with is now gone. This story is pretty raw for all involved, so that's all I'm going to say on that for now. But it's pivotal to mention, as since going through this experience, I have a much deeper understanding of the emotions involved in missing persons cases, and have a much deeper empathy for all the families out there who are still living with the unknown and the ambiguity after so many years. So it was with a broken heart I watched a news story a few years ago featuring the kids of Jennie Kehlet appealing for information about their missing mum and stepdad.
I went out there, I saw the site, and it just, knowing them, it just makes no sense for them to get lost. There's so many ways back to camp.
At this stage, their mum had been missing for about 7 years, so I went back and looked at the original news stories. I was taken aback by the details I learnt in what many journalists rightly described as a true outback mystery.
Good evening. There's hopes tonight of a breakthrough in one of WA's biggest mysteries, the disappearance of mother of three, Jennie Kehlet. Police have uncovered potential clues in the outback.
We have exclusive details tonight on a twist in the search for a couple missing in the outback. Police are preparing for a fifth search in the WA outback based on fresh leads.
Now, despite today's efforts by police, they have actually wrapped up their search here in Sandstone, but they haven't yet ruled out returning for a sixth time if these items turn out to be significant.
Sandstone is a remote town, 750 kilometres northeast of Perth in Western Australia. It's an ancient and stark landscape whose original inhabitants were some of the last Indigenous Australians to make contact with European Australians. How these original custodians of the land survived and thrived in such a stark landscape for thousands of years is a testament to their deep connection to the land. After a boom period of huge growth and activity in the gold rush of the 1890s, the town grew to about 8,000 people. Those days are well and truly over, and Sandstone's population has now dwindled to under 100 people. Having grown up in Perth, let's just say it's not a spot that many usually visit, but if people do go there, it's usually for one reason and one reason only: gold. Longtime Sandstone local and professional prospector James Allison explains.
Oh, some people get obsessed by it, yeah. It's like anything. I mean, gold is where you find it. And sometimes you've got to put a lot of miles of walking, detecting and looking around, and you'll spend weeks out there and you may not get nothing. But all of a sudden you'll turn around and you'll come across a patch or a few pieces, and you sort of look around and wonder why it's in this place and not somewhere else you've looked. It all looks the same, but that's just gold. It's where it is. Gold's a funny thing that you will always get the one person that'll brag about it and show you a piece. But 95% of the real bona fide, genuine prospectors will just say, yeah, I've got a bit, I found a bit. They don't go into any detail.
Prior to this project, I'd only been to this area once when I was about 6 years old on a family camping trip. I've memories of adventuring in the red dirt while our parents fossicked around for old bottles and unsuccessfully tried to prospect for gold with some metal detectors they'd hired back in Perth. For most people, prospecting is just a fun one-off activity, something to try while on holiday in the Goldfields. But for others, what starts as a weekend hobby can quickly turn into a full-blown obsession. The dream of striking it rich with a giant gold nugget, especially after a few small finds, can really set off that classic gold fever. On our trip though, our parents didn't get too carried away. What I remember most are the makeshift bush showers, the freedom of running wild through the scrub, sitting by the fire at night, and the laughter during the little concerts we'd put on, singing songs and acting out plays beneath that stunning outback sky. But I also remember the sudden panic one day when one of the dads badly burnt himself working on a car. The mood flipped from carefree to crisis in seconds. Luckily we weren't far from town and he got medical help, but it was a stark reminder: when you're out in the bush, if something goes wrong, it can go really wrong, really fast. Fast forward 40 years to Sunday, the 22nd of March 2015. I was heading out to the Wheatbelt region of Western Australia for the first day of filming an exciting new project. I was quite nervous heading out there, knowing the scale of what was involved. I was anxiously thinking about the best approach to capture the project. At that very moment, on a road not too far north of me, a very tired 63-year-old man was making a long 700-kilometre journey home from a prospecting trip in the Sandstone region. He'd been camping and prospecting with his two friends and work colleagues, Ray and Jennie Kehlet and their dog Ella, on a trip the group had been anticipating and planning for months. A trip that started with dreams of riches and gold discovery that had ultimately taken a tragic turn. A trip that 3 people set out on and only one person returned. That person was Graham Milne. Alice Atkinson Caravan Park in Sandstone is a tidy and well-kept holiday park in the heart of the northern Goldfields. It is truly in the middle of the outback. On March 28, 2015, Carolyn Cramp, the manager of the caravan park, noticed something out of the ordinary. A large black and white Great Dane dog had wandered into the park, alone. For a town literally in the middle of nowhere, this was a very strange occurrence. The dog looked tired, thirsty and hungry, so Carolyn fed and watered the dog, assuming that soon enough the owners would come looking. After several days, no one had come forward, so Carolyn contacted the Shire, and on the 31st of March, it was found to be Ella, the pet of Ray and Jennie Kehlet, who are from the town of Beverley, 700 kilometres south of Sandstone. Ray and Jennie were both in their late 40s and were described by those close to them as being deeply in love and laminated together. They'd met in 2004, having 5 kids between them from previous relationships, and by all accounts were deeply in love and would do everything together, including working on a mine site in the Pilbara region of Western Australia. In 2009, Ella came into their lives and became an important part of the family and was loved by all. Ella was a Great Dane rescue dog and was always by Ray and Jennie's sides, travelling with them on their many adventures, being very accustomed to life in the outdoors. Their latest adventure took them deep into the Sandstone region of Western Australia. Alongside them was their friend and workmate, Graham Milne, an experienced prospector. The trio had been planning the trip for months, hoping Graham's knowledge of the region would lead them to gold. For Ray and Jennie, the dream was simple: find enough to leave the mines behind and focus on running their farm full-time. They were especially excited about a particular stretch of land dotted with old mine shafts, a place they'd nicknamed the $3 million patch. Because prospecting hotspots are fiercely protected, they agreed to keep the exact location a secret. They didn't tell anyone precisely where they'd be camping, but they did let their kids know they'd be off-grid for a while due to limited mobile coverage, leaving a satellite phone number just in case of an emergency. So, on the 31st of March, when Ella still hadn't been claimed, the Shire of Sandstone scanned her identification tag and contacted the Shire of Beverley to report the lost dog. The Shire of Beverley then got in touch with Ray's daughter Mel and her partner Elizabeth, letting them know that Ella had been found alone. They were immediately concerned. They knew Ray and Jennie would never let Ella out of their sight. Elizabeth describes that phone call in her own words.
I had a phone call from Beverley Shire. We were the secondary emergency number, so that's why we were called. And they said that they picked up Ella, and I assumed it was here in Beverley. But as the conversation went on, I realised that it was up in Sandstone. So I got off the phone and I thought it was really strange. You know, you just have that feeling, the hairs on your back of your neck stand up on end. So I ended up ringing the Shire of Sandstone, their offices, and they said, oh yeah, she's just walked into town and she's at the caravan park. Yeah, it was just that, well, there's an empty campsite, nobody's there, Ella's in bad condition. And I got off the phone again and I thought, this isn't normal, something's not right. And we were given the number of the satellite phone because Mel had just come out of hospital. And I rang it, and the deal was with Ray and Jennie was that they would have the phone simply because Mel could go back into hospital any time.
Elizabeth then called the satellite phone number Ray and Jennie had left them in case of an emergency. A man picked up the phone. It was Graham, Ray and Jennie's friend, whom they'd been camping with.
First of all, there was no answer. And then he did answer, and he was really weird. I mean, obviously I've never spoken to the man before, but he was very abrupt, very brash, very non-committal. Explained who I was, asked where they were, and he just said, you know, I've got the phone, I'm back in Perth, they're still up there, and pretty much hung up on me. got off the phone and I'm thinking, okay, I'm ringing the cops. And then I suppose the rest is history. We put in a missing persons report and, yeah, that's when the nightmare really started off.
That phone call set in motion what would become one of the biggest missing persons searches ever conducted in Western Australia.
And the search is now in its 5th day and being expanded. The base for the operation is Sandstone. Rebecca Johns is there. Beck, police are still hopeful of finding the pair.
Tim, it's been a very long and tiring day for search crews who have spent hours scouring through bushland, spotting from planes and looking down mine shafts. And at the crack of dawn tomorrow morning, they'll be up and at it again, hopeful they'll find Jennie and Raymond Kehlet. 700 square kilometres of remote, harsh terrain in WA's outback. This is the search zone for rescue crews desperately trying to find Jennie and Raymond Kehlet.
For everyone involved, very frustrating. The amount of assets we've put into this, you'd expect us to find something, and we haven't.
The couple, aged in their late 40s, are from Beverley. They were last seen 2 weeks ago by a friend at their campsite in Tabletop, just south of Sandstone, about 730 kilometres northeast of Perth. Police say the prospectors were new to the game, but they're extremely experienced campers. With them, they'd taken a metal detector, GPS and water.
The camp itself appeared like they were very imminently returning and not gone for a long time.
Concerns were raised on Monday when their dog was found walking through town alone. Their quad bike also discovered 500 metres from their campsite, the keys still in the ignition.
At the time they were reported missing, Ray and Jennie were living on a 150-acre hobby farm in the regional town of Beverley. They dreamed of one day retiring there and making a living off the land. To help fund that dream, they both worked fly-in, fly-out jobs at the Cloudbreak mine in northern Western Australia. Ray and Jennie loved the outdoors and were always up for an adventure. So when a workmate, Graham Milne, mentioned he was a keen gold prospector with access to a promising site, they were intrigued. That interest quickly grew into an obsession as the trio began planning a trip to what they called the $3 million patch, a location near Sandstone they believed was rich in gold. The Sandstone region was heavily mined during WA's gold rush over a century ago, and hundreds of abandoned mine shafts still scar the landscape. Most prospectors avoid them. They're extremely deep and incredibly dangerous. But it became clear Ray, Jennie and Graham had other plans. They intended to explore them. And there's only one way to access shafts that deep: abseiling. Jennie's daughter Brittany confirmed that Graham had visited the couple's Beverley property several times in the lead up to the trip, teaching Ray and Jennie both prospecting and abseiling skills. The plan to explore abandoned mine shafts was also backed up by a family friend, Mark Watley, who spoke with Ray and Jennie at a dinner party 1 month before their trip on February 13th, 2015. During the 2020 coronial inquest into their disappearance, Mark recalled that conversation, stating, "They had discussed with me that they were planning on abseiling down old mine shafts to look for gold." Correspondence between Ray and Graham in the lead up to the trip confirms their plan to explore abandoned mine shafts, with one in particular standing out. They consistently referred to it as the hole, and it appeared to be a key focus of their prospecting plan. The only way to access it was by abseiling, and Graham was the only one in the group with any experience doing so. That experience was confirmed by Graham's prospecting friend Mark Houlihan, who had previously travelled with him to the same area. Mark recalled watching Graham abseil into a mine shaft there, using his quad bike winch as an anchor. These are his words, but not his voice.
In relation to the prospecting that you undertook in Sandstone, did you abseil at all on those prospecting trips?
Well, I didn't, but Graham did once.
And can you explain what he did on that occasion?
Well, he just went down a shaft to do some metal detecting.
And can you describe how Graham abseiled on that occasion?
Well, he'd put the ropes onto his motorbike.
So he tied a rope onto his motorbike?
Yep.
And then?
We abseiled down her, yeah.
During the 2020 coronial inquest, multiple emails and texts confirmed the group's intention to access these shafts and highlighted how much Ray and Jennie trusted Graham to lead the way. In one email, Ray wrote to Graham, "It probably doesn't matter, as we'll not be going down the holes without you anyways." Jennie's final diary entry also reflects the group's excitement about the plan. A dedicated diary writer, her last entry, dated March 18th, 2015, simply states, "Hopefully go to hole, fingers crossed." It's important to note that despite all the evidence suggesting otherwise, Graham Milne consistently denied during the coroner's inquest that the group ever planned to rope or abseil into abandoned mine shafts. He claimed the references to the hole or holes in their messages were either about a mine near their workplace or possibly a jewel cave the group had considered visiting in the Sandstone region that Jennie had a particular interest in. Given the number of abandoned mine shafts scattered across the area where the Kehlets went missing, one of the police investigation's first lines of inquiry was the possibility that they had accidentally fallen into one. A more specific theory emerged early in the investigation, one that ultimately led police to treat the case as a missing persons inquiry rather than a potential homicide. This theory was largely based on the information provided by Graham about the behaviour of the couple's dog, Ella. Milne told the police that Ella had repeatedly run off chasing wildlife during the trip, and that Ray and Jennie had spent much of their time tracking her down. He claimed that by the morning of March 21st, he'd grown so frustrated that he decided to head off prospecting alone in what would be his final day and night at the campsite. These are his words, but not his voice.
Jen was cooking breakfast and the dog bolted again. Then Ray got his bike and I gave Jen my quad so that they could round it up. They went in two different directions and I cleaned up camp, and then that morning I was prospecting.
From this story, the theory took shape that while searching for Ella, Ray and Jennie had become lost and possibly, in the dark, fallen into one of the many abandoned and dangerous mine shafts. Journalist Rebecca Johns reflected this concern in an early report, saying,
"The biggest concern for rescue crews so far have been these abandoned mine shafts. They're worried the couple may have fallen down one and become stuck. Now, cliff rescue crews from both Perth and Kalbarri have so far checked through 33 mine shafts, but they've found nothing."
However, from the outset, the family found this scenario highly unlikely on a number of fronts. Ray had grown up in regional Australia and was a very safety-conscious individual with an extraordinary sense of direction. His younger brother Dave elaborates.
Ray and Jennie were both very experienced campers. They loved the outdoors. They were always off camping and that. So the idea that they'd done something silly enough to get lost just never entered our imagination at all. I just assumed that there'd been like a minor accident and they were perhaps sitting out waiting to be found. We just assumed that someone's rolled an ankle or whatever and they were doing the smart thing by sitting it out and waiting for help to arrive. Never thought anything malicious at that stage, at the very, very initial stage, but we also didn't believe that they were missing in the sense of got lost.
Ray's daughter Mel also shared a similar sentiment.
They didn't get lost out there. Just didn't happen. There was landmarks that you could see, and also for some reason Dad always knew what direction he was and where to go to get back. He had a great sense of direction. And Jen, being a volunteer firefighter, she wouldn't have got lost either. Like not a chance in my eyes.
Furthermore, the theory that Ella was spooked and ran off chasing wildlife never sat right with the family. It didn't match her temperament or their own experiences of camping with her. Ella was an experienced camper, well accustomed to wildlife, and according to Ray's daughter Mel, who had camped with her before, she was not the type of dog to chase kangaroos.
When we went camping in 2013, we went up north to go fishing. We camped only a couple of 100 metres off the beach and a reef. She was very calm. She stayed with us or by the tent on her bed. She didn't chase anything, and I saw things when we were out there camping. I saw kangaroos, foxes. Actually, when we were packing up, there was a snake that started coming at me. She didn't go for it. Dad picked it up, chopped its head off, but she didn't go for anything.
In the early stages of the search for Ray and Jennie, Graham Milne sat down with journalist Alex Cullen for his one and only interview with the media on Channel 7's Sunday night program.
If anybody knows anything, please come forward and tell the police.
According to Graham's story in subsequent police and coronial interviews, he has stated repeatedly that the dog kept bolting away from the camp, chasing wildlife, and that this distraction led to a conflict within the group, which came to a head on the 21st of March. According to Milne, Ella had once again bolted from camp that morning, and he made it clear to Ray and Jennie that he'd come out to prospect for gold and not to chase dogs. He then set off alone, and according to his own statement, spent the next 18 hours prospecting by himself. Milne said he returned to camp between 2 and 3 a.m, packed up his gear immediately, and began the 750-kilometre drive back to Perth, alone.
So you got back to camp. What did you see? Anything unusual or...?
Before I left?
Yes.
Appeared to be the same.
And where were Ray and Jennie?
I assumed they were in bed, in the tent on top of their trailer.
And you didn't want to disturb them?
No, you don't go knocking on somebody's tent early hours of the morning. It's just not done.
How's this affected your life?
It's just sheer hell. I think about them every day.
I've travelled 750 kilometres northeast to Sandstone to see this place for myself and get a feel for the key locations at the heart of this story. I also knew it was important to meet some of the people closest to the case, and this was my chance. We are now entering Sandstone. Left home at about just past 6, and now it's just past 3. So it's been a big day, and still half an hour from the campground. But I will shoot Dave a message soon and let him know I'm almost there. Dave Kehlet is Ray's younger brother. I first reached out to him in late 2024 to see how he'd feel about a podcast and documentary on Ray and Jennie's story. I knew he'd been approached by the media many times over the years, and while a somewhat reluctant spokesperson, he'd done an incredible job keeping the case in the public eye. From the start, I was up front. I told him I wouldn't move forward unless the family was fully on board. I explained that my approach would be different from traditional media, and I shared a bit of my own story, including why I felt I had a unique perspective on missing persons cases. I also made it clear that I'm not a journalist, even though I've worked in media for years. He was on board. As the 10-year anniversary of Ray and Jennie's disappearance approached, Dave got in touch. He said he'd be heading to Sandstone for the occasion and suggested it was a good time to come up and record some interviews with people who'd been closely impacted by the story over the years. It was also a chance to spend time with another key figure, Rick. In recent years, Rick's carried out his own investigation of the campsite and the nearby mine shafts, uncovering new evidence now being reviewed by WA Police. Rick has become a crucial part of this case, and you'll hear more of his remarkable story in future episodes. After an 8-hour drive, here I was.
So campsite, and you can see there, straight through there, that's the track that goes up to the hole.
So this is the campsite here. Is this the tree right under this tree here?
Yeah, that's right.
I felt a sense of unease, knowing we're about to visit a location that has become central to this story, the hole. This site was found to be marked on a hand-drawn map found in Jennie's diary several days into the search. The map showed directions to the group's campsite, written in both Ray and Graham's handwriting, with a specific spot just north of the camp clearly labelled First Hole. When overlaid on Google Earth, it lines up closely with a mine shaft that had been cleared early in the search. On April 1st, 2015, police from nearby Mount Magnet reported a foul odour near the shaft but assumed it was a dead kangaroo. The next day, WA Police's Tactical Response Group conducted a visual check from above and cleared the mine shaft. SES workers also inspected the shaft on April 3rd and declared it clear. But nearly a week later, during a reenactment filmed by a media crew and the Department of Fire and Emergency Services, a shocking discovery was made at the base of the hole.
We have exclusive details tonight on a twist in the search for a couple missing in the outback. Specialist crews sent in to search mine shafts have found human remains, but they're not linked to Jennie and Raymond Kehlet's disappearance.
90, very decomposed.
Human remains, but not that of the missing husband or wife. The body of someone else lost in the desert, so badly decomposed, police say it could have been there for months or even years.
Initially, investigators were convinced the remains could not have been those of either Ray or Jennie, as they were so badly decomposed. But as time went on, the narrative began to shift.
The search for a couple missing in the outback could hinge on the autopsy on a body found in a mine shaft last week. Jennie and Raymond Kehlet's family has told 9 News it may be linked to the disappearance, even though it was ruled out initially.
Jim Keegan accepts his ex-wife Jennie and her partner Raymond may never be found, but he admits he's struggling.
Not having any clue as to where they've gone leads everyone to suspect all sorts of things. It's just baffling that they've disappeared with no trace.
3 weeks ago today was the last time the couple was seen alive. They were looking for gold in Sandstone, their camp discovered deserted and locked down by police. Only a water container, a metal detector and possibly abseiling equipment missing. The area is treacherous terrain, riddled with hundreds of old mine shafts. Despite the efforts of hundreds of SES volunteers, specialist officers and rescue experts, authorities say for now it's hopeless to keep searching on the ground. The best lead for police is a male body, partially decomposed and clothed. It was found down a mine shaft last week. The couple's loved ones are desperately hoping a post-mortem, scheduled tomorrow, will determine it's not Raymond, but police say it could be.
We're still hoping it's not, but they did indicate that the body wasn't as old as first thought, so that's why they warned us just to be prepared.
If it is the 47-year-old, it's likely another operation will start using ground-penetrating radar and excavation equipment around the mine.
Ultimately, we'd like to find out that they were wandering around in the bush and they show up, but we would like closure one way or the other.
Dental records and DNA ultimately confirmed the family's worst fears. The body found at the bottom of the hole was in fact Ray. Jennie's kids found out via television news reports. Dave was in Sandstone at the time.
They were up here with a plan, and that plan was to rope down mine shafts to find gold. So the fact that where he was found at the base of the mine shaft, and given the mud map location, it stands to reason that they did rope down that hole. You know, they were at the base of that hole. So my opinion is that it's almost like there was a parallel path of intentions. What Ray and Jennie's intention was a belief that they were up here on the basis to do that, to rope down mine shafts for that purpose, but potentially the other person's intentions were somewhat different, yeah, to say it lightly.
After all my research, standing here at the hole felt surreal. This is likely where Ray took his final breath, and I can't imagine what it's like for David to return. When Ray's body was found and then identified 9 days later, the family's grief and frustration only deepened. Their concerns about foul play still weren't being taken seriously by authorities.
At this point in time, we're not seeing anything that suggests criminality.
Are you serious?
Yes.
There's nothing suspicious about this?
At this point in time, we're saying there is no evidence of any criminality. However, we are making sure that we investigate it thoroughly and we look at all the possibilities.
For them to have continually treated it as a missing persons case for months, that's when you can't recover that. It's just catch up from then on. When they found Ray in particular, if they had flicked the switch straight away, I'm sure we would not be in this position now. Major Crimes refused to look at it for months. They didn't even listen to Mark Reynolds, and he was the chief of forensics. So that 3 to 4 months before they finally decided to investigate it properly, it's gone. It's catch up from there on.
In future episodes of Some Kind of Closure, we'll continue to explore the key details of Ray and Jennie's final trip, speaking with family members, experts, and others closely connected to the case. We'll also examine crucial evidence and testimony from the 2020 coroner's inquest. If you or anyone you know has information about this case, you can contact us via our Facebook page, The Man in the Hole. As the series unfolds, we're hopeful that more people will come forward with insights that could help piece together a clearer picture and ultimately bring the families some kind of closure and hopefully justice. It's also important to note that a $2 million reward is currently being offered for information leading to a conviction in this case. This is one of the largest rewards in Australian history, offering a powerful incentive for anyone with knowledge to come forward. If you have any information related to this case, please contact Crime Stoppers on 1800 333 000. Even the smallest details could make a huge difference. That number again, 1800 333 000. We acknowledge the Badimaya people of the Yamaji Nation as the traditional custodians of the lands where this episode was recorded. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and recognise their enduring connection to this unique and beautiful place. Thank you for listening to Some Kind of Closure. If you found this episode valuable, please consider subscribing and leaving a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It's a quick, free way to support the show, and it really helps us reach more people. This is a fully independent production. If you'd like to support the podcast, we'd love to hear from you. Just get in touch via our Facebook page. Lastly, we acknowledge the presumption of innocence for all individuals discussed in this series. Any opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the producers. Thanks again for listening.
We've only got one side of the story.
They were just everyday people.
We find Jenny, we will find out what happened.
And the truth will prevail.